Christianity has made the world a better place. Now, Richard Dawkins might disagree with me. Richard Dawkins is a thinker in a group that called themselves or we were referred to as the New Atheists. And the New Atheists thought that Christianity and faith itself should actually be eliminated from the world because it was dangerous. Dawkins has written, "Faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate." Dawkins and the New Atheists think that Christianity and faith in general has made the world a worse place. Instead, thinkers like Dawkins and humanists and atheists believe that there are certain truths that are self-evident. You may recognize the phrase from the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." This is part of a strand of thinking that appeals to what is called natural law. And natural law is thought by some to be a law that is inherent in the world. It's built into the universe. It's universal. It's deeper than government-made laws, human-made laws. It's self-evident. You see, natural law, they would say, means that according to natural law, every person wants to live a good life. And every person wants every other person to live a good life. Natural law, they say, would say that all of us believe that violence and the shedding of human blood is naturally somehow wrong. These things are self-evident. But the simple fact of the matter is that the idea that all human beings have a self-evident truth is not actually true. These humanists believe that if we would all get rid of faith, if we would get rid of Christianity, then in its place, over time, somehow, we would all align ourselves with natural law. We would all accept these truths that are self-evident. We would all want the better for one another. In a post-faith, post-Christian world, they see a secular, a humanist utopia when we all align with these self-evident truths. But the simple fact of the matter is, these truths are not self-evident. Richard Dawkins himself understands the truth of that. Recently, Dawkins called himself a cultural Christian. Strange thing for an atheist to write. Strange thing for an atheist to say, but it's actually not the first time that Richard Dawkins has called himself a cultural Christian. And by that, what he means is that he likes certain artifacts of Christian culture. He thinks Christmas carols are pretty. And he believes that church buildings are pretty and that the world is better with pretty buildings in them. So he says, I'm a cultural Christian. By that, he also means that if he's given a choice between living in a society that is undergirded with Christian theology and ethics, that society would be better than a society built on any other religion on earth, and that society, undergirded by Christian theology and ethics, would probably be better than any society that's built on any other philosophy. Why has he come to that conclusion? Because Dawkins and other atheists like himself have looked at a world that seems to be post-Christian, where faith is diminishing, and they see that this secular consensus, this self-evident consensus, is not emerging. They see that the world without faith is not getting better, it's getting worse. And so they are realizing that these truths that they thought were self-evident, that everybody would accept and align with and lead to a secular humanist utopia, well, that's a fantasy. Because these truths are not self-evident. Christianity actually is the thing that has made the world a better place. And when I say Christianity, I mean the faith that teaches the gospel of Jesus Christ and those who hold to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, let's be clear about something. Christians don't always get everything right. In fact, Christians in history have made some terrible mistakes. But Christianity has shaped the world around us. Christianity has shaped Western society and Western civilization in deep and abiding ways and made Western society and Western civilization better than it would have been without Christianity. In fact, Christianity has reshaped the dialogue in the world about culture and right and wrong. Christianity has made the world a better place, and it begins with the value that we place on human life. This is important for you to grasp. The value of human life is not self-evident. The value of human life is not self-evident. It's not held universally across all cultures and across history. In order to understand how deep this goes, we need to go all the way back to the beginning and recognize that the fall introduced death, darkness, and violence into creation. The Bible tells us that in the beginning, God made the world. And when God made the world, he looked at it and he said, it's good. About us, he said, it is very good. But then we sinned. We fell. And when we sinned, we introduced death into the world. Now everyone dies. Everything dies. Everyone suffers. Everything suffers. And the Bible, in the earliest chapters of the book of Genesis, tells us that once sin was released into the world, sin spread, death spread, decay spread, violence spread, darkness spread. In fact, in Genesis chapter 6, we read that God looked at the world and he saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Death and darkness had spread to such a point that God decided to do something about the decay that was loose in creation. And so as we continue to read, we discover that God sent a flood to cleanse the earth of this death, decay, and darkness and evil. God saw on all the earth one righteous man. His name was Noah. And God chose Noah and his family. He chose to save them. He told Noah to build an ark, a great boat that would survive the flood, and to bring his family onto the ark, and to bring representatives of all of the creatures on land and in the sky onto the ark. And when the construction was complete and everyone was safely aboard, it began to rain. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The surface of the earth was covered in water. Everything that walked on land or flew in the air that was not on that ark died. And at the end of the flood, slowly the waters began to recede. And when the waters were gone and Noah came off of the ark, God looked at creation and he saw death, decay, violence, evil. They weren't gone. They were still there because they were there in us. In Genesis chapter 8, we read, "For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth." God said to us, "I will never destroy the earth again." Not because God considered that a grace, but because he realized and said to us, there is evil in your heart. As long as you are part of creation, death, and violence, and darkness will be a part of creation as well. And so the value of life is not self-evident to us. And history tells the fact that death and darkness and violence are part of who we are as human beings. It's what we have done everywhere and always. And you get a sampling of just how much the value of life is not self-evident in the history of the Roman Empire. You see, the Roman Empire in some ways represents a pinnacle of ancient civilization, and yet the Romans did not value life. You look at it, you look at the way that they treated children, and it gives you a very narrow slice of just how much most cultures do not value life. The Romans didn't value the lives of anyone unless they contributed to the well-being of the empire. And consequently, they had a complete disregard for the value of the lives of children. As Roman society evolved, the family began to decay in Roman society. Marriages became a formality. And that left Roman women alone. And Roman women, particularly among the gentry, sought love outside of their homes. They had multiple extramarital affairs, but they sought to hide the evidence of those extramarital affairs. And so it became common for Roman women to take potions that would induce abortions. It was just a part of what they did because they didn't value those lives. When babies were born, the babies were frequently abandoned because Romans wanted small families. Sometimes they couldn't afford to pay to feed their families, and sometimes the husbands would see that the baby that's been born wasn't from them, and they would choose, instead of keeping the babies, to discard the babies. And so they would abandon the babies in the wilderness, or they would throw them in the sewer, or toss them into a river. They frequently abandoned their children. They even actually actively killed. They engaged in infanticide with their newborn frequently. If there was any deformity in the child, then they would kill the child frequently by drowning the child. This was the practice that was common in the Roman Empire because they didn't value life. Now, those practices have changed through the centuries, but it is still true that even to this day, many cultures on earth do not value human life. They frequently on earth today engage in elective abortion. There are plenty of places where abandonment of children is still practiced. There are places where the killing of newborn children is still practiced. The value of life is not self-evident, even on the face of earth today. And there are people who actually will speak out and say that human life is not valuable. In 2017, Richard Dawkins got caught in this trap. He tweeted in 2017 that if a couple had an ultrasound or test and discovered that their fetus had Down syndrome, that they should abort the fetus because the fetus would be happier never being born, and the family would be happier if the baby were never born. Now, thankfully, people pushed back against Dawkins immediately. People who had family members with Down syndrome tweeted back, "I wish you could get to know my family member and see how happy my family member with Down syndrome is." They tweeted back and said, "Our family has a member who has Down syndrome, and we are happy. Look at how happy we are." I'm grateful that people pushed back against Dawkins' insanity. But the interesting thing is, in the process, they bought into his line of reasoning. They argued that happiness validated the life of a person with Down syndrome. And Dawkins' argument is that the value of human life is based on its usefulness and the happiness that it brings to that person and to the world. Happiness is not the source of our value. The source of our value lies elsewhere. God declares human life valuable. God declares human life valuable. In Genesis chapter 9, as the flood is over, God reaffirms, actually, human dominion over creation. Back in Genesis chapter 1, when God made human beings, he told us to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And God went on and said, you are to have dominion, actually, over the earth. And what he meant is, you are my representatives in creation. I have dominion over you and over all creation, but I make you my representatives, and you are to have dominion over creation, meaning that our dominion over creation should reflect God's goodness. In Genesis chapter 9, one might question, would God want fallen humanity to still have dominion over earth? And God affirms, no, you as fallen humanity are still to have dominion over earth. In fact, God expanded our dominion over earth. But when God spoke about what our dominion over earth would look like, he expressed that dominion with a striking degree of realism. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 2, God said, the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. God said there will be fear of you. Fear is what we have of God. It is a healthy respect. Creation will have a healthy respect for you as my representatives on earth. But he also realistically said, in addition to the respect and awe of you that it should have, creation will dread you. Because you're fallen, you're sinful, you're evil, you're violent. You have dominion over creation, and it will fear you as it should fear me, but it will also dread you. It will live in sheer terror of your capacity for violence and destruction. Creation will dread fallen you. God balanced this dominion with giving us a command to have a respect for life. Immediately after this, God said, you have eaten of the plants before, you now may eat of anything in creation, including animals. This respect continues. He says, in every animal there is blood. That blood is their life. And he says, every creature is responsible for me, for its blood, for its life. But he says about us as human beings, not only are you responsible before me for your life and for your blood, but you are responsible for the life and blood of the things around you. God gives us dominion over creation, and he gives us responsibility for creation and for life itself. And then God reaffirms the value of human life. He does it in verse 6, where he actually outlaws murder. He says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. Look here, there is this responsibility for blood. If we kill a human being, we are responsible for the killing of that human being. That's what he's ordering us. But look at what he says about us. Why? Why is it such a big deal to kill a human being? Because that human being is made in my image, God says. Now, this is what we read in the beginning. In the beginning, God made us in his image. But then we sinned. We rebelled against him. We fell. Decay and death and darkness and violence entered the world and entered us. And you have to ask, is that image still there? And God says, yes, that image is still there. It's clouded, it's shrouded, it's hidden under all that other stuff, but my image is still in you. In some of you? No, in all of you, regardless of who you are. This person, that person, one who belongs to me, one who resists me, one who seems to be good, one who seems to be bad. He says, all of you are still made in my image. God declares us valuable. He says, you are made in my image. You are valuable. Why? Because I declare you to be. Not because you're useful. Not because you're happy. Not because you make somebody else happy. Because I declare it. God declares that we are valuable. And then God places the rainbow in the sky as a sign of this covenant arrangement with us. God makes promises that he will not destroy the earth again by a flood. It is a covenant that he makes, and he seals that covenant with a rainbow in the sky, and that rainbow is a reminder that God values life. And everywhere in the Bible reaffirms the fact that God made life, God values life, God made human beings, God values human beings, and God declares human life valuable. And so it is up to us as Christians to live out. That is a gospel claim, and it is up to us to learn, to figure out how to live out that claim of the gospel. And as we've done so in the past, the gospel has made the world a better place. The gospel has made the world a better place. You see, Christians are the ones who outlawed abortion and all kinds of killing of children. Now, at the beginning, when we were first rising up as a movement, we were a minority movement within the Roman Empire, and we could not change society or the laws. But we lived out our faith. Christians did not kill their children, and Christians didn't abandon their children. And when others abandoned their children, Christians took their children in and raised them as our own. We did that from the beginning. And then when Christianity began to grow as a percentage of the empire, eventually our practices began to change the practices of the society around us. And when we became the majority in the Roman Empire, we outlawed elective abortion and infanticide and abandonment of children. Things didn't change overnight. Just because a law was put in place didn't change the world instantly. Not everyone was a Christian, and not every Christian practiced their faith. But Christianity began to change the world around us. Christians also outlawed gladiatorial combats and senseless violence. You see, the Roman Empire loved to see gladiatorial combats. They didn't value the lives of certain people, and they would make them gladiators. They didn't value the lives of slaves or prisoners of war or criminals. And so they would train them to fight. And then they would put them in amphitheaters around the empire and force them to fight to the death for the entertainment of the masses. Christians refused to go to these games. And it's interesting that their neighbors accused them of being unpatriotic, of being un-Roman, for not wanting to go to these games to see people die for the glory of their gods and for the glory of the empire. And in a cruel twist, a cruel and ironic twist, eventually many Christians died at the hands of gladiators in the amphitheaters of the Roman Empire. But Christians outlawed gladiatorial combat and senseless kinds of violence. Christians in history have even limited warfare. And I know the argument is made that Christians and nations that claim the name of Christ and of Christianity have fought wars and have done terrible things in history. And I recognize that there is some truth to that. Christian nations have fought wars. Christians have made terrible mistakes in the past. But the truth of the matter is as well that Christians are the ones who have limited warfare. Christians are the ones who introduced the idea of a just war. And to fight a just war, there has to be a cause worth fighting for, and it typically is defending the rights and the existence of those who cannot defend themselves. And in thinking about just wars, Christians are the ones who have introduced the concept that in a just war, you limit the damage. There shouldn't be any unnecessary civilian casualties. And Christians are the ones who introduced the notion that you should treat prisoners of war in a humane fashion. Please understand, these things did not come into history from people who were not Christians. The entire debate about what a just war is came into history because Christians introduced the concept. Christians are the ones who have limited warfare. The gospel has made the world a different and better place. And disciples of Jesus can still make the world a better place. What is a disciple of Jesus? We need a clear definition of a disciple. A disciple is someone who has decided to follow Jesus, is being changed by Jesus, and is multiplying disciples of Jesus. A disciple is one for whom Jesus has changed our heads, he's changed our hearts, and he is changing our actions. And so how can we as disciples continue changing the world around us? Well, it's going to begin by changing our heads. There is a decision that we have to make. So decide to follow Jesus. How do we do that? Boom. Okay. Agree that human life is precious. This is the head change that has to happen for us. We have to agree with the gospel truth that human life is precious. And that means all human lives. It means agreeing that children are precious, even the unborn children. Agreeing that people with different abilities are precious. Agreeing that those who are losing abilities are precious. Agreeing that those who are different from us are precious. Agreeing, knowing that you are precious and that I am precious in God's sight. Not because I'm useful, not because I'm happy, not because I make you happy, because God declared me valuable, precious. Now I recognize as I speak this way, you may be closing your mind and your heart to what I'm saying. And I ask you, don't close your mind, don't close your heart to what I'm saying, to what the Bible is saying about the way that God values human life. Because I recognize that there are political overtones to what I'm talking about, issues that we face as a society that are divisive, and you may have opinions on those divisive issues, and you may be closing your heart and your mind right now. And I need to say, I understand that these issues are complex. If you are dealing with a family member, friend, a loved one who is coming to issues of losing abilities and end of life, I understand with the technologies that we have and the choices that we have in front of us, that is complicated. I understand. And please also understand, if you are a person sitting out here today whose life has been changed by an abortion in the past, please understand that I'm not here today to pile guilt or shame into your life. Please know that there is forgiveness and new life in Jesus Christ. And I understand these issues that we're talking about are complicated. But please don't close your heart or your mind to the gospel and to what the Bible tells us about the way that God values human life. It changes our heads, but it changes our hearts. Be changed. How do we do that? We value your own life and the lives of others. This is the heart change that the gospel makes to us. Valuing our own lives does not come naturally to all of us. And here the gospel is saying that you are valuable. You are valuable in God's eyes. No matter who you are valuable in God's eyes. But it also involves valuing the lives of others. And as we value the lives of others, that means we value the lives of all of the others. People who look different from us, people who think differently from us, people who act differently from us. They're all valuable in God's eyes. He's made them all and declared them all valuable. And when you value the people who are around you, all of the people, some of the people are easy to get along with and like. And some of you are tough to get along with and like. And whether you're easy to get along with and like or difficult to get along with and like, you are all valuable in God's eyes. The heart change means I value you because God values you. And in this heart change, we recognize that violence becomes repugnant to us as well. It should not be something that we enjoy to see violence depicted in front of us. There needs to be a deep heart change for us on this matter. It's a head matter, it's a heart matter, but it's a hands matter as well. To multiply as disciples of Jesus, we protect human life at least as well as our ancestors in the faith have. We protect human life at least as well as our ancestors in the faith have. Because you see, the changes that have happened in history did not begin in the public realm and in the political realm. They began as Christians lived out the demands of the gospel in our lives and in our homes. And it is incumbent upon us to do this today, to value children, to value the unborn children, to refuse ourselves to abort children out of convenience, to refuse to walk away from our children, to include in our lives children who have been abandoned by others. This is incumbent upon us as a demand of the gospel. In addition to that, we are called upon to value the lives of those who are losing their abilities, who are differently abled than we are, and who are coming to the end of life. We Christians have always done that. We have stood by them. It is incumbent upon us not to glorify violence and to revel in violence. And it is incumbent upon us to keep thinking about the difficult and thorny issues that are in front of us. And there are thorny issues that we have to sort through together. We have to come to positions together about things like reproductive technologies that are available to us. What are we going to do about stem cells and research? And there are many other difficult and thorny issues when we talk about the value of human life that we have to sort through, and we are going to sort these things through as Christ followers. But we've got to live the value of human life together as disciples of Jesus, because it happens in us before it ever happens out there. But as we live for the value of human life, as we live out this gospel truth, am I saying that we could advocate in the public realm as well for this truth? Yes. Advocate, organize, express your opinion. Talk about the truth of the gospel in public places. Christians are the ones who have done this through the centuries, and the world is a different place because of it. But more important than what you do in the public realm is to understand that God values you. God declares you precious in his sight. He sees you. Jesus died to pay the price for your sin. Jesus rose again from the dead. Because of that fact, now you can have new life. Eternal life. God sees you. And he wants a relationship with you. He doesn't just want you to know about him. He wants you to know him. And so what does the value of human life mean? Above everything else, it means say yes to Jesus. Because God sees you. He values you. And he wants a personal relationship with you.